In November 2021, in the basement storage of the Iraq Museum in Baghdad, an Italian conservator opened a wooden crate that had been forgotten since 1968. Inside were 11 clay tablets. 10 were dull grain records. The 11th was different. It described 90,000 people evacuated underground, a living affliction that descended from the sky and killed without touching, and a surface that remained uninhabitable for months because it produced skin burns, vomiting, blindness, and death within days. The symptoms that Sumerian scribe recorded 4,000 years ago matched the clinical profile of acute radiation poisoning with chilling precision. The translator finished his work, sent the text to 3 colleagues, and the tablet was immediately classified as a state secret. No one has published anything, but I have obtained the content of that translation. Stay until the end, because what I am about to reveal could rewrite human history. And once you hear it, you will understand why some people would rather this video did not exist. In November 2021, an Italian-Iraqi restoration team working in the basement storerooms of the Iraq Museum in Baghdad opened a wooden crate labeled Tell al-Hiba, Season 1968, Unsorted Material. Tell al-Hiba is the modern name for the ancient Sumerian city of Lagash, one of the largest urban centers of the 3rd millennium BC. The 1968 excavations were interrupted by a political crisis. The materials were shipped to Baghdad, the crates sealed, and placed in a basement where they survived 3 wars, the looting of 2003 and the flooding of the lower levels in 2015. Inside the crate were 11 clay tablets in typical condition, fragmented, crusted with salt, with partial preservation of the cuneiform script. 10 turned out to be administrative records, grain accounting, labor allocation, temple supplies. The 11th tablet was different, larger, thicker, with dense text in 3 columns on both sides. When conservator Marco De Gregorio carefully removed the salt layer from the obverse, the first column was not economic text. It was a narrative. De Gregorio photographed the tablet and sent the images to the epigrapher of the Iraqi State Board of Antiquities, al-Hashimi, who began preliminary transliteration that same evening. 3 days later, al-Hashimi called the team leader and said the transliteration likely contained an error because the text did not describe the destruction of Lagash or a temple ritual. It described a mass evacuation underground. The tablet used the term ugi, which in the Sumerian administrative vocabulary means the gathering of people for relocation, and specified a number, 25 shu in the sexagesimal system. 1 shu equals 3,600. 25 shu is 90,000. 90,000 people assembled and moved beneath the surface. And the second column explained why. It described what was on the surface after the last stone doors were sealed from within. Al-Hashimi found no error in his transliteration. There was no error. And the third column, on the reverse of the tablet, which took another 2 weeks to clean, described what awaited above when the doors were finally reopened, and why most of those who went up never came back down. The second column of the Lagash tablet begins with a phrase that has no parallel in any Sumerian lamentation hymn or known mythological text. The phrase is antag-galed, which translates as the great affliction that descends from on high. The usual Sumerian word for affliction, namusag, appears in hundreds of texts, medical, theological, administrative. It describes illness, misfortune, divine punishment. But on this tablet, namusag is modified by a determiner that changes its meaning entirely. The determiner is the one used exclusively for living beings, animals, humans, gods. What descended from on high was not a storm, not a flood, not a celestial phenomenon. The scribe classified it as alive. The text then describes this living affliction in 11 lines that al-Hashimi initially believed too damaged for reliable reading. They were not damaged. They were specific in a way that made them hard to accept. The affliction moved across the land in waves. It did not walk. The verb used is da, which means to fly or hover. It produced a sound that the text describes as nagal, a great mournful roar that stampeded animals and silenced children. It did not attack cities. It emptied them. The distinction is important. The text does not describe walls broken down or buildings destroyed. It describes populations fleeing before the affliction reached them, as if its mere proximity was enough to trigger mass evacuation. The Sumerian verb for what the affliction did to humans who remained on the surface is ush, which means to kill. But it is combined with bar-ra, meaning from outside, and z, meaning breath or life force. Killed from outside by the removal of the life force. Not struck, not burned, not drowned. Something that pulled the life from the body without visible physical destruction. People died standing. People died sitting. People died mid-step. The text says their bodies remained whole, but their breath was gone, as if a force had taken it. A force the scribe could only describe with the vocabulary available to a Bronze Age observer documenting something that had no name in his language. And then it gets worse, because the tablet describes what happened to the bodies after death. The first column describes the evacuation with a logistical precision that reads less like myth and more like a military operation report. The Council of Lagash received warning from the Watchers of Areridu-Igadu, those who see first, a term that in administrative texts designates scouts positioned on high places. The warning arrived with enough lead time to permit a structured response. The tablet describes 3 phases. Phase 1 is called shudu, meaning the counting of hands, which al-Hashimi identified as a census. Every household was counted. Every family assigned to a group. Every group assigned to a specific underground network designated by a glyph that translates as sealed house under the earth. Phase 2 is called banker, meaning possessions were moved below. Grain, water, livestock, oil, seeds, and bronze tools were transferred to underground chambers before the population followed. The tablet lists concrete quantities. 14 gur of barley per family, 1 gur equaling roughly 300 liters, for 25,000 households. That is 7.5 million liters of grain, enough to sustain a population for more than a year. Phase 3 is called a galbandub, meaning the great doors were sealed. The text describes stone doors designed to roll shut from the inside, sealing each entrance with a barrier that could not be opened from the surface. The word for these doors is narrow eagle, literally great stone mouth. They were closed from within. They were designed so that nothing on the surface could follow the population underground. The scribe notes that 17 distinct entrances were sealed simultaneously across the region of Lagash. 17 entrances. This was not a cave. It was infrastructure, built, supplied, and sealed according to a plan that already existed before the threat arrived. The question the tablet raises, but does not answer, is how long that plan had been in place. Was this infrastructure built in response to an immediate threat, or had it been maintained for generations against the possibility that the threat would return? The third column suggests the second answer, because it contains a phrase that implies the underground network of Lagash had been used before. The third column is the section that has generated the most private discussion among the 4 people who have seen al-Hashimi's transliteration. It describes the period after the doors were sealed, narrated from the perspective of the watchers who observed the surface through ventilation shafts. Narrow stone channels angled upward toward the surface for air circulation. The shafts were too small for anything to enter, but wide enough to glimpse fragments of the sky and hear sounds from above. For the first 3 days, the great mournful roar grew louder and faded in cycles, as though the affliction swept the region in successive passes. The watchers reported that livestock left on the surface died within hours, not gradually. The text uses ginda bush. They fell as one, simultaneously. On the 4th day, the roar ceased. Silence. But the watchers did not recommend opening the doors. The text says they saw something through the ventilation shafts that made them oppose any attempt to return to the surface. The cuneiform here is partially damaged, but the legible portions describe a change in the sky. The light became wrong. The word is dalakar, brightness combined with wrongness. Not darkness, not eclipse. The light itself was altered. Whatever was above did not simply kill. It altered the environment. The air, the light, the conditions on the surface were no longer what they had been. The watchers recommended waiting. The population waited. The text says they waited a period described as itesh, which translates as 3 months. 3 months underground. 90,000 people in sealed chambers, with rationed grain, counted water, and the sound of their own breathing echoing against stone walls. And then someone opened a door. The tablet describes the opening of one of the 17 doors by a group the text calls Luigi Zoo, the men who know. a term used elsewhere for specialist scouts or trained observers. 7 men went up. The text is precise with the number 7. They ascended one of the entry shafts and reached the surface. The tablet describes what they found with language that shifts register, moving from administrative documentation to something closer to lamentation, as if the scribe, who had been recording logistical facts with clinical precision, could not maintain that tone when describing the surface. The fields were ash, not burned. The text distinguishes between fire damage and what it describes here. The word is sahar dala, meaning dust that shines. A fine luminous residue covering everything. The rivers had changed color. The text says the water of the Tigris had turned the color of copper. All structures still standing were coated in that dust. The trees were completely bare. There were no birds, no insects. The silence was absolute. But the 7 men did not turn back because of the landscape. They turned back because 3 of them fell ill within hours of reaching the surface. The text describes the illness in specific terms: burning of the skin where it was exposed, vomiting, rapid weakening, confusion. The 4 who remained healthy carried the 3 back underground. The doors were sealed again. 2 of the 3 died within days. The 3rd survived, but lost his sight. 2 more attempts were made in the following months. The same result: skin burns, vomiting, death within days, fewer volunteers each time. The text uses a phrase al-Hashimi translated as the surface had become territory of the affliction. The affliction was no longer physically present, but the surface itself had become toxic. The land, the water, the air, the luminous dust covering everything. Contact with it caused rapid deterioration that matched no disease in the Sumerian medical corpus. The population did not return to the surface. The tablet says they moved further down and then laterally, connecting their tunnel network with other systems to the southeast. The last legible lines describe a population adapting to permanent underground existence, restructuring their agriculture around subterranean water sources, and maintaining sealed doors at every surface entrance for a period the text describes as 3 generations. The clinical symptoms on the Lagash tablet: skin burns, vomiting, rapid weakening, blindness, death within days, and a surface that remained lethal for months, do not correspond to any natural disaster in the geological catalog. Not volcanic ash, which produces respiratory symptoms first. Not an impact winter, which kills by starvation over months. Not plague, which does not leave luminous residues. What the symptoms match, with uncomfortable precision, is acute radiation exposure. The progression described: initial skin erythema, gastrointestinal distress. Rapid systemic failure is the clinical sequence that appears in every modern radiological medicine manual for exposure to high doses of ionizing radiation. The vomiting, the skin burns, the death in days, the blindness in the survivor correspond to an exposure of between 4 and 8 grays, a lethal dose that produces death within 2 weeks. The luminous dust corresponds to radioactive fallout, particulate material loaded with isotopes that settles on surfaces and continues emitting radiation. The altered light, Daliker, brightness with wrongness, could describe atmospheric ionization following a nuclear-scale detonation. The copper-colored water could describe the oxidation effects caused by intense radiation on river sediments. No mainstream academic has proposed this interpretation. The 4 people who have seen the transliteration have discussed it privately, and the conclusion they have not committed to writing is one no Assyriologist would attach their name to publicly. The Sumerians may have documented a phenomenon our civilization did not produce until 1945. The tablet does not name the source. It does not describe a weapon. It describes the aftermath. And the aftermath is described with a clinical detail that a Bronze Age scribe could not have fabricated, because the symptoms it describes were not documented by modern medicine until the survivors of Hiroshima were examined in August 1945. They match acute ionizing radiation exposure. The text is either the most medically precise fabrication in the history of ancient literature or the record of something mainstream science lacks a framework to explain. Al-Hashimi completed his transliteration in January 2022. He shared it with 3 colleagues: one at the University of Pennsylvania, one at SOAS London, and one at Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich. The Pennsylvania colleague responded enthusiastically, suggesting joint publication in the Journal of Cuneiform Studies. The SOAS colleague requested high-resolution photographs of the tablet before committing to any assessment. The Munich colleague did not respond for 6 weeks, then sent a brief email stating that publication of the transliteration would be premature and that the tablet required independent physical verification. Al-Hashimi submitted a preliminary paper to the Journal of Near Eastern Studies in March 2022. It was returned without review. The journal stated they did not accept submissions based on unpublished artifacts without institutional verification, a standard bureaucratic check. Nothing unusual. What was unusual was what happened next. In June 2022, the Iraqi State Board of Antiquities reclassified the Lagash tablet under Restricted Access Category 2, a designation reserved for objects of national heritage interest requiring ministerial approval. A tablet from an unsorted crate, stored in a flooded basement for 50 years, elevated to the same security level as the work of vase. Al-Hashimi was informed that any further work on the tablet would require a formal research application reviewed by a committee that meets twice a year. He was requested to delete his photographs from all personal and institutional devices. It is unknown whether he complied. The tablet remains in the Iraq Museum. It has not been assigned a public catalog number. The transliteration exists in the private files of 4 scholars, none of whom have published. The Lagash tablet describes an event for which modern archaeology has no category, a living affliction that descended from on high and killed without physical contact. A mass evacuation organized with logistical precision and executed through 17 underground access points. A surface environment that became lethally toxic for months after the event, producing in exposed humans symptoms that match known natural phenomenon but correspond exactly to acute radiation exposure. 3 generations of permanent underground habitation, and a population that never fully returned to the surface. The tablet is in Baghdad. The transliteration is in private files. The Journal of Near Eastern Studies returned the paper without review. The Iraqi government elevated the tablet to restricted access within months of its translation. The 4 scholars who have seen the text have not published. They have not spoken on the record. They have not attached their names to any interpretation of what the Lagash tablet describes, because any interpretation leads to a place where academic careers do not survive. If the symptoms are radiation, the question is what produced it 4,000 years before Trinity. If the evacuation was planned, the question is who warned them. If the infrastructure already existed, the question is how many times this has happened. The tablet does not answer these questions. It records what happened with the precision of a scribe trained to document grain shipments, applied to an event that exceeded every category his language contained. He did not editorialize. He did not interpret. He counted the people, listed the supplies, timed the phases, described the symptoms, and recorded the outcome. He wrote it on clay, placed it in a box, and the box was buried under the rubble of a city that collapsed before anyone read what he had written. The tablet waited 4,000 years to be opened. For people have read it. None have spoken. The question is not whether the Lagash tablet is authentic. The question is what will happen when someone decides that 4,000 years of silence is enough. The tablet is in Baghdad. The doors were sealed from within. And the record, as the scribe intended, survives.